Hello, presenters. How are we?
Yeah, good.
Hi. Good,
Again,
thank you.
That's great. Well, we can all see and hear each other, and we've got 41 people waiting for us in the room here. So, hello, attendees. Thanks for waiting. And if you just bear with us while some more people arrive in the webinar room, then we'll get underway pretty shortly. My name's Fraser May. I'm going to be your facilitator today for our Where's Civil Construction at with Sustainability webinar, which is based off the back of the 2023 Construction Industry Survey. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Manager at CCNZ, or Civil Contractors New Zealand. Do a couple of introductions in a moment, but we'll just wait for people to keep arriving in the room. You can see on the right-hand side, there's a chat function that the presenters and I have been using prior to the webinar for our own internal testing. But feel free, and please do ask any questions you've got during the webinar using that chat function, and we'll do our level best to get the answers to you, whether that's, hopefully we're going to do it at the end of the webinar, because we're going to do about 10 minutes of Q&A, or if not, we'll take a record of that and we can follow up with you following the webinar, so then we can get you what you need. So thanks everyone, and welcome once again. I can see that we've got some people posting in the chat function already, so that's great. I'm just going to give it about 30 seconds more or less, and we'll kick off. In fact, while I'm doing that, I'm just going to do a couple of little introductions to presenters today. So, as I said, I'm Fraser May from Civil Contractors New Zealand. With me today, I have our technical manager from CCNZ, that's Michelle Farrell. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
She's Auckland based, and she leads our work in this space. Next to Michelle there, we've got Tom Mansell, who's Head of Sustainability, or Sustainable Outcomes, isn't it? Sorry, I think I got your wrong title there. Head of Sustainable Outcomes for Auckland Council Healthy Waters. Hi, Tom. How you going?
Great, Fraser. Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for coming. And we've got Jim French, who's the Construction Industry Specialist from Teletrac Navman. Good to see you again, Jim. Always good having you along for these.
Always a pleasure, Fraser.
You're joining us from Sydney, aren't you?
Yeah. It's beautiful in Sydney today, heading for the usual 100 degrees or something similar.
Excellent. And next up, we've got Emelee Mello, who's the New Zealand lead for ratings from Infrastructure Sustainability Council. How are you going, Emelee?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Auckland based. Okay, and we've got finally Ilka Loubser from Fulton Hogan. She's the National Sustainability Program Manager, aren't you, Ilka?
Yeah, got it right. Thanks, Fraser.
Okay. Yeah, on track. So just a little background to this webinar. About CCNZ, who are we? Most people sign on will be familiar with CCNZ. We're the National Association for Horizontal Construction in New Zealand. Just a little bit about us there. And one of the things we do is provide national and regional forums to tackle challenges. So if we're hearing from our members that sustainability is something we need to work on, then it's something we'll tackle. So every year, what are we covering off today? We're going to look at where some different parts of the industry might be at. We're going to give you a broad definition of sustainability, and then we're really just going to drill down through the client perspective on sustainability into some case studies around some of the practical ways that contractors and others can deal with it, whether that's through technology or through good business practice. And then we're going to kick on to some Q&A. As I said at the start, we really want to hear what you have to say and what you think. So please use the chat function to let us know what you need, and then we can follow up. It's really important for us as an industry association. Just in terms of, I might get everyone else to switch their cameras off at this stage, actually, just so we're not overlaying over the text. So that'd be great, thanks, and we'll get everyone to kind of come back for the Q&A together. Now, every year, CCNZ engages with members with something called the Construction Industry Survey, which is a partnership that we have with our major associate member, Teletrac Navman. And that tells us basically a bit of a state of the industry, whether it's business confidence. So that's an example of some of the numbers that it comes back with. But drilling down into sustainability, I think we've seen skills shortage and availability of workers is one of the major challenges. We've seen some cost fluctuations and government pipeline being some of the major challenges. But environmental and sustainability challenges, they're getting up there. year on year. We're probably seeing about a 5% increase in how much attention businesses are paying to that. And if we drill down into it, looking at how contractors are getting work and how that's tying in with procurement and sustainability practices, we're seeing about maybe upwards of 30% winning contracts based on broader outcomes each year. So when we talk about sustainability, we're not just here to talk to you about carbon reduction, we're talking about broad sustainability. So just on that note, I'm going to hand over to Michelle. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to drop a link to the construction industry survey into the chat function so that you can go and follow up on that yourself, and you can drill down into the data as you want to. You're very welcome to do that, but I'm going to hand over to Michelle now, who's going to take us through a little bit of where civil construction's at with sustainability, and just do a little bit of a broad discussion before we get into some of the more specific presentations. Take it away, Michelle.
Thanks, Fraser. Yeah, so we've put on these, this webinar for starters to understand what work's been done in the industry and what work is needed to be done to achieve sustainability goals. But first, we just need to understand that sustainability is not just about reducing effects on the environment. It can refer to anything, a business, a lifestyle block, a bank account, a country, or an industry. So we're talking about a system, or in this case, a sustainable system. So think about a bank account, provided the money going into an account is the same as or more than the money going out of the account, the balance either stays the same or it increases. This is a sustainable bank account. Or think of human resources in a business. If the number of new employees is less than the number of employees resigning and the work required remains the same, the business may become unsustainable over time. It can't sustain itself in terms of the human resource unless the amount of work decreases.
Sorry, just a little comment there because we're getting a bit of background noise. I know there's some challenges with turning the mics off, but just presenters, if we could be aware of that. We can kind of hear that when it comes through. Please take it away. Keep on going, Michelle.
Thank you. Sorry, just going back there. Yeah, so what are we doing in the sustainability space? So CCNZ understands that support for contractors is a big part of our CCNZ strategic plan. We know that it's important that we have consistent structures to measure sustainability, and we have an active national sustainability committee that we've formed, plus there's some regional committees in place through the branches around New Zealand. So there's opportunities for civil contractors to take a leadership role in delivering good sustainability practices. I think, so the things we need to consider when we're looking at sustainability, I think, are efficiency. Obviously, an efficient process reduces our use of resources. We need to look at reducing, reusing and recycling so that we're minimising our usage of non-renewable resources. We need to improve or consider the resilience of what we're building, because when a natural hazard comes through, if it's wiping out what we've already done, then extra resources are being used to build that back again. So resilience is important, and also diversity. So making sure we don't have all our eggs into one basket. And if one resource becomes unavailable, which we've seen during COVID, for example, then we've got other things in place to back us up. So the reasons we're running this webinar, I wanted to help demystify what sustainability means in civil construction and understand some of the jargon that is used and bring it back to what you do day to day. A way to share resources, tools and technologies that people might be using. And I want to focus on delivering practical, achievable solutions. We're aiming for a consistent and coordinated approach, a national approach across the country. And we're bringing together contractors, tech providers, clients and supporters. So thanks for having me, and I'll pass it back to you, Fraser.
Okay, thanks for that, Michelle. We'll come back to some Q&A with Michelle. I guess we do have some publications with CCNZ as well around environmental protection and that sort of things as well. I mean, in terms of the CCNZ Environmental Guide, for example, that's available for members to provide direct tools to manage environmental impact. So, yeah, we're working in this space, but really we want to know what members need from us as well. So again, we'll keep working on that. I'm just going to pass over to our next presenter, who's Emelee Mello, New Zealand lead for Infrastructure Sustainability Council. And she's going to tell us a little bit about the frameworks that we can use to measure sustainability and why we might use them and why we kind of need to a society. Are you with us, Emelee? You got your camera?
Kia ora. I am trying to put my camera back on, but it doesn't seem to be turning on.
Yes. Okay. Well, what I might ask you to do is to close your browser window and re-enter using the presenter link if you could.
Okay, one moment.
All right, thanks for that. So Emelee is going to take us through a bit of a rundown. She's from the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. They are the framework that Wahakutahi, for example, uses to measure sustainability on its projects. And they're based in Australia. Emelee is based in New Zealand herself, but she's going to talk us through some of the ways that the projects come together when she rejoins us, which should be in just a moment when she clicks through on that link. And in the meantime, I've dropped in a link to the Construction Industry Survey. Right, welcome back, Emelee. How are you doing?
Thank you. Good. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you and see you just fine. Please take it away.
Perfect. Okay, so kia ora everyone. I am Emelee Mello. I am the New Zealand lead for ratings and delivery at the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. And today I'm going to delve into the topic of sustainability and how it connects to infrastructure development. So sustainability is a global commitment, and what you can see on my slide is the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs, which were introduced by the United Nations in 2015. And sustainable development, as defined by the UN, is development that meets needs of the present without compromising the ability of our future generations to meet their own needs. So how does this translate into the world of infrastructure? So we are going to touch on how does infrastructure impact on sustainable outcomes and what frameworks and tools support infrastructure sustainability. So sustainability in infrastructure means designing, constructing, and operating with a focus on optimizing environmental, social, and economic outcomes over the long term, often referred to as the quadruple bottom line. Now, let's address the central question. It's not about whether if we need infrastructure, but how it can be provided in ways that are sustainable, resilient, and compatible with our net zero future. As you can see here highlighted at the bottom, infrastructure is responsible for a staggering 79% of all greenhouse gas emissions and 88% of all adaptation costs. This emphasizes the sector's crucial role in achieving the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. So the key takeaway here is that sustainable infrastructure isn't just an option. It's the only way that we can ensure that our people, nature, and our environment thrive together. So how do we measure and ensure sustainability in our infrastructure projects? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Infrastructure Sustainability Rating Tool, also known as the IS rating tool. So the Infrastructure Sustainability Rating Tool spans over the entire life cycle of a project. So as you can see on the slide here, it goes all the way from strategic planning to detailed planning across through to the operations. And within the tool, as you can see at the bottom, you can see the SDGs. So the credits align with the quadruple bottom line and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And what it does the framework serves as a guide for project teams to enhance their sustainability and achieve great outcomes for their projects. So one of our really exciting initiatives, which I would like to delve into a little bit deeper, was an initiative that we did which was designed and aimed to helping projects of all sizes to achieve better outcomes. So introducing IS Essentials. So our IS Essentials is a tailored solution for our smaller projects under 100 million. So we created this framework to empower all projects, regardless of their size, so that they also had the tools they need to achieve sustainable outcomes, because it's not always easy to achieve sustainable outcomes. There can be a lot of cost upfront and such. So how can we help all projects achieve this? So the primary purpose of the IS Essentials was to ensure that the smaller projects don't miss out on all the amazing opportunities that they have to excel in sustainability. And in conclusion with this is that whether you're working on a large-scale infrastructure project or smaller ones, there are so many amazing opportunities and outcomes. So if you are working on a smaller project, please don't be deferred as such. There are still some amazing initiatives that you can do. And as you can see on the slide here, there's a wide range of asset types, and the capex of the projects that we have at the moment undertaking the Essentials pilot tool vary from 8 million to 100 million. So there's quite a wide range. A little bit about the rating scheme across Australia and New Zealand. So in New Zealand, we currently have 21 ratings. However, we have actually experienced quite a significant surge in ratings over the last couple of months, particularly from Waka Kotahi, who implemented a mandate for the IS framework to be used on all projects exceeding 100 million. And then this slide highlights some really remarkable achievements from our City Rail Link project, including the diversion of an impressive 57,802 tonnes of waste from landfill, graduating 29 rangatahi, which is our younger generation, through the Progressive Employment Program, and dedicating 7% of the Link Alliance spending to Maori and Pacifica-owned subcontractors and suppliers. But as you can see, there were many more initiatives, and if I had as much time as possible in this webinar, I would have shared lots of different initiatives from many of our different contracts, because there are so many good initiatives across New Zealand. And what you can see on this slide here is our impact report for 2023. And within this impact report, the collective impact of individual initiatives becomes very evident. And it just really illustrates that each contribution, even if undertaken independently through different projects, collectively, all of these initiatives results in a really substantial and meaningful overall impact. So this is available on our website if anyone would be interested in seeing the impact report and all the great initiative outcomes. And then just a couple of my closing messages is just really highlighting that we are all in this journey together. So the most important thing is just to kind of get started and keep moving, building that knowledge and capability, and also learning from others and sharing our ideas so that we're not just sitting on all these amazing ideas rather than sharing it with the wider industry, because it's through collaboration that we will thrive together as a nation. Really understanding your baselines and setting targets, and understanding that all parts of the value chain have a role to play when it comes to sustainability, and also moving away from thinking that mainly that it's around carbon, because there are so many other aspects of sustainability as well. So that was everything for me. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks very much, Emelee. I should have known her before, actually. You were directly involved in the City Rail Link project in a previous incarnation when you worked for Downer, is that right?
I was. Yes, I was on the City Rail Link. Gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago now, but it was probably about 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, So been involved there for quite a bit, and then worked with major projects in renewable energy for Downer for a good couple of years before I decided to move to the ISC to kind of pursue a career very focused on sustainability and see how it help the wider nation.
Yeah, so hopefully we can drill down into some more of the direct tools as we go. So feel free to ask any questions for Emelee around the rating scheme or how that framework enables projects to build infrastructure sustainably. Next up, we've got Tom Mansell from Auckland Council, who's going to have a bit of a chat with us about the Sustainable Outcomes Toolkit. I'll just hand over to you verbally now. Tom, please take it away.
Cheers, Fraser. Thanks. So yeah, I'm Tom Mansell. I'm in Auckland Council and Healthy Waters. So we manage stormwater. So we design, build, maintain the stormwater infrastructure in the Auckland region. So I'm giving you a bit of perspective, probably from the client side, what we've been working on and the journey we've gone from in sustainability in the last few years. So it's actually back in 2019, we came up with the Sustainable Outcomes Toolkit for Healthy Waters. And the purpose of that toolkit was to embed sustainability in everyday practice with the contracts that were going out. So we wanted to provide an easy mechanism to value and actually get some real outcomes. Since then, Auckland Council has modified it and adopted and adapted the toolkit to have it council-wide. So it's quite a good toolkit now. It is council-wide. So we have taken what we've done in 2019, modified it, and this was the toolkit in last year. So as these previous speakers have said, the sustainability for us, it's social and environmental. Improving supply diversity with Maori, Pacifica and social enterprises, creating quality employment. I've got a slide on that, and that's through Ngāpuna Pūkenga program or NPP. I'll explain that a bit later on. Engaging local suppliers. What we're aiming to do here is to try and, when we have these big infrastructure projects in communities, we want to try and give some of that wealth back to that community as their local contractors, local suppliers we can bring into that project and not just leave them with infrastructure. Also, zero waste is a big one. We've got big targets to try and minimize waste and get to a zero waste. And I'll also go over what we're doing with net zero carbon. So this is for Healthy Waters. We went through a panel. We had a panel of designers and contractors. And what we did is we put a 20% weighting on sustainability, which in our what we have found is anything really below that, when it was 10%, really didn't make that much difference for the suppliers. You couldn't win a contract on 10%. But when we hit the mark of 20%, it allowed our suppliers to really put resource behind sustainability, and it could actually, if they put the resources in, it would win them the contract. We also had track record and relevant skills as 40-40. This was to get on the panel, and this is for the next 5 years work. So just going on that, the supplier submitted a tender, and with those attributes I've just explained, we awarded them, and then we deliver. The important thing we found is how to follow up and make sure that we deliver on those commitments that were made during the tender. And it requires, as we said, collaboration between council, designers, suppliers, and the physical works contractors, and able to achieve it. So just looking at some of the social targets, and I mentioned these before, we're looking at 5% direct spend with Maori, Pacifica owned and social enterprises. And then 15% of indirect spend with Maori, Pacifica and social enterprises. Creating quality employment. What we will want to achieve here is 200, basically putting 200 unemployed Aucklanders back into employment through our contracts and through our contractors and suppliers. And this is a great partnership we have with Ministry of Social Development. I've got a slide coming up on that. And as I said before, engaging local suppliers. So this is as a council, so this is not Healthy Waters. These are the drivers for Auckland Council. So at least 100 contracts awarded to local suppliers, and generally this is subcontracting. Subcontractors would be looking at here. So this is the social for getting the unemployed back into employment. This has been where we get funding from Ministry of Social Development, which we pass on to our suppliers to bring a person who's unemployed back into employment. And that funding helps with getting tickets, driving license, whatever it needs to keep that person in employment. It's been running, I think, almost since 2019, and we've put over 800 people back into employment, which is quite a good achievement, especially the retention rate is 80%, and which can, some of the long-term unemployed, it's not quite as easy as placing them into work. There's other, works that needs to go along with that. And from that, over 30% Maori, Pacifica 15%, and which is quite good, 17% female, which we're quite proud of. So that is an ongoing program. And again, it's a great partnership with Ministry of Social Development, which helps us hit our targets. And zero waste and net zero carbon. We are now looking at all our contracts have a waste management plan. We're trying to minimize waste going to landfill. In Healthy Waters, for us, it's sediment and it's cut. It's just the soil, basically, we take to landfill. So we're looking at how we can reuse that. Also, this comes back into the design as well. When we're designing capital works, what we can do to minimize the waste during the design, then in construction. And the carbon as well, we have to reduce our emissions 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050, which is quite a hard task to do, but we are working on that. And so because of that, 100% of our contracts to incorporate a carbon management plan. So with the carbon, we look at is the embodied carbon, which for us is probably the highest amount of carbon we use, and that's in the extraction, manufacturing, and during the construction. And we're looking for our suppliers and our designers how we can reduce that. So for us in managing stormwater, we've gone through this, and concrete is by far the biggest draw for carbon with us. We're looking at, then comes transport and then earthworks. So we're looking at, can we get a low carbon concrete? Can we reduce the, and a lot of this also with the carbon is the specifications of our materials. We are focusing on that and looking, are they right fit for purpose? Do they need as much carbon to deliver some of this? So with carbon, we found, and the research shows we knock most of the carbon out by basically, do we need to build that new asset or not? And you get most of your carbon saving in building less, but in the design. So when it comes to the construction, we've got probably about a 20% saving. And we are looking at every aspect of that and how we can minimize carbon. So as I was saying before with the carbon, it's low concrete carbon. We're trying to, ideally, we'd like to minimize diesel burn on site, and that would be electricity to the site, electric vehicles, and also haulage, where our quarries are, where we're delivering landfill, trying to bring things, to economize, to reduce that transport cost. And we need to do this with our suppliers and work on the planning of the construction, where things are going, where the materials are coming from. Also, the reuse of materials, and that is, we can start that process in the design, but usually the suppliers come up with fairly innovative ways, if we allow them and resource them to do that, to reuse the materials. So where we're up to at the moment, we are, as I said, we have a waste management plan, a carbon management plan, and we've got the social outcomes. We are reporting, we're a bit further ahead on the social side because we have been doing that for a bit longer. But what we're doing now is we're asking all our suppliers and contractors to report on diesel burn, the carbon they use, and the waste. And we're going to probably spend about a year, maybe a year and a half collecting to find out we're collecting this data. And obviously we're collecting it for a reason, because then we're going to start looking at realistic targets. So because everyone also puts a message out to our suppliers, you know, we value that data because we're going to be measured on it, and everyone will be measured on it. And as we're saying, this is a collaborative approach. We want to reward, and what we are doing with that 20% weighting and non-priced, to do well in sustainable outcomes gives you a better chance of getting your next tender. And also share the success. This is a very innovative environment, and we want to, you know, we've got a lot of catch up to do in environmental and social issues. So the more we share, the better, you know, the more faster we can achieve them.
Great.
Up to you, Fraser.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tom. I guess you've got some interesting questions coming through the chat function, so keep them coming. So I think there's some good discussion we can have out of that. Really good to see kind of what you've been doing from the client side and how you're thinking about that at the moment, Tom. And also I think, you know, we might have a little bit, it looks like we might have a little bit of discussion about how that might change under the new government coming up. But and I guess from a local government perspective, it's really good to have your thoughts in there on that as well, to give contractors a read of what might be happening in that space too. Would you mind if we shared the Sustainable Outcomes Toolkit? From my perspective, having seen that come through a couple of years ago, I thought that was interesting. So
it would be the council sustainable toolkit now. So
yeah, that's right. Okay, well, I'm going to put it in the share function in the on the right hand side there, so people can grab it as a downloadable file. That's all right, Tom? Great. Next up, we have Jim French from Teletrac Navman, who's going to take us through some of the technology that can be used to measure sustainability in construction. And Jim's going to give us a bit of an overseas case study. So please take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Fraser. Afternoon, everyone. So I'm based in Sydney, so these two case studies will be related to infrastructure projects in this region. One of them, which has been in the news quite a bit recently, is Roselle Interchange, which is a sort of complex spaghetti junction underground, which links Victoria Road, which goes from the sort of northwest suburbs to the airport, and the city out to the western suburbs. So the two tunnels combined cost $3.2 billion as part of a $16.8 billion WestConnex package. And the second is Sydney Metro, the Metro Tunnel West part of this, which is a $2.16 billion project as part of an overall extension of the metro from the city centre out to the Westmead Health Precinct, and then I think from there it links out to the new airport being built out in Western Sydney. One of the caveats on this is, you know, all the equipment involved in these projects needed either apps or displays installed in them. So there's a lot of work in terms of how it would be managed. We're breaking it out. You know, you will see a lot of talk around ESG, which is like environment, sustainability, and governance. When you're building in, you know, built-up areas, traditionally, you're going to get a lot of complaints from locals. So in an endeavour to maintain compliance rates and keep large truck and dog out of, you know, small suburban streets, the project had to come up with a real-time traffic management solution, and it had to be demonstrable that we could actually stop traffic going into, you know, down wrong streets. So you build up exclusion zones, and also part of it is, you know, we need to be able to demonstrate that this has happened. So there needs to be an objective evidence chain of information available in real time, not in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You know, it has to be available instantly to satisfy the demands of the contractor's customers. In this case, it's the state government in New South Wales, and also all the LGA, you know, which are affected by the individual projects. And that involves the management of, of not only traffic, but noise pollution, ensuring that local sites of significance, whatever they be, whether it's a local church or an old building or, traditional owners, that they are preserved, and that we manage driver behaviour. So as part of the environmental management, and it becomes difficult to break this out between environment, sustainability and governance, because they do overlap quite a bit in this context. So in terms of sustainability, one of the things that come up in conversations is knowledge share, and it was mentioned briefly in one of the other slides, and that's sharing information, sharing tools, sharing technology, and explain it to the industry how you're managing the project. So working closely with the joint ventures involved, they have presented their own case studies on how this project was run. They've outlined how they're managing, such a big project in a very tight area, and that actually transfers to other JVs looking into this. And we know from experience that once construction companies and infrastructure companies start investing in technology, that potential customers increases, because there's an understanding that the technology will have an impact on the sustainability, not only of the project, but the company that's actually investing in the technology. And that's good for your customers, because they get an understanding of, that you're going to be around for a while, and that the information that they're getting is sound. Community engagement and employment is another part of it, setting up infrastructure where the community can come and speak to people rather than just necessarily getting onto the phone. Sorry, if you've got trouble here, let me know. So as part of sustainability, we want to ensure and be able to measure the impact of the technology. So with the data that's recorded on each of these projects, we can prove certain things have happened. And through, the electronic database, it ensures quicker payment for the subcontractors. So as the subcontractor completes the cycle, they submit an electronic form that goes both to their company and to the contractor. So there's a massive reduction in, there's no elimination, that will never happen because it's construction, there'll always be arguments, but the reduction in arguments about whether a task has been completed or not, is dropped off. I have some, examples of that as I go through it. This is one of the areas that the subcontractors particularly like, because they have the information in real time to say, we've completed that delivery. And not only that, we can show that what's been picked up as contaminated waste has gone to an approved site, and the recyclable waste has gone somewhere that's appropriate. So in this particular project, Roselle, most of the recyclable material has ended up on the new Nancy Bird Airport in the western suburbs. So we have that information. We also know how much fuel has been burnt by the trucks on route, how far they've travelled. So as you can imagine, cycle time and that information contributes to cost. And we know what the carbon emissions are based on this information. In terms of governance, when you're in a built-up area, as I said earlier on, there's a lot of problems associated with it. Small streets, schools, pedestrian zones, hospitals. So in these areas where you've got a lot of potential for congestion and competing interests. So how can I prove that we haven't had an impact on a specific road by running a report and showing that none of my trucks have been down that road over the lifetime of the project, because I've got the digital data to back it up? That's one way. Secondly is integration. Now we've looked at integration, and these projects have looked at integration with parking meters as an example. So if parking meters are being used, it usually means somebody's parking at them. If they're constantly not, if they're being underused, that may be an indicator that there's a problem, and it may be that project is impacting local businesses. So having the ability to have a look at this and understand if you are actually affecting business is important. Overweight, integration with weighbridges, so that when a truck goes over the weighbridge, there's an automatic alert back to the site to say this truck is overweight, and they get circled. So again, this sits into environment as well, because we're not sending out overweight trucks using more fuel, burning, causing problems with that. And staging in authorized locations, this is really difficult, as most of you will be aware when you're working on projects in built-up areas. These big trucks have to park somewhere while they wait to get onto the site. The sites are small, largely, and they don't have capacity for 40, 50 trucks at a time. But you don't want your truck staging an hour away from the job, or it becomes completely ineffective. So you have to work out areas that they can stage and where they can't stage. In this instance, we had illegal staging in a location. Dropped a geofence on it with a warning stating to the drivers, if they weren't out within 5 minutes, that we gave them 5 minutes leeway and said, you're in an exclusion zone, you have to exit immediately. Within 24 hours, that problem is gone and has never returned. So any time that we suspect is illegal staging, we can manage it and prove that it actually works. So in terms of other success, speed events were reduced by 80% within the first month of operation on both projects. And the speeding events were minor. Well, it's minor. And we're usually on off ramps coming from sort of 80 zones or 90 zones. As you're going down an off ramp, most people they're not going to go down at 60 kilometers an hour. There's a bit of washout on that. So that's the location of most of them, but that's highlighted. Exclusion zones, as I said, they were breached within 24. Breaches were, eliminated within 24 hours, and calls to the hotlines disappeared with respect to trucks. And the ability to prove that your truck wasn't in that area is a big thing as well. And within 6 weeks, we had eliminated weighbridge. Well, I say we, actually not me. The contractors had eliminated trucks exiting any of the 7 sites overweight. So overall, the management has been really good and very successful. And telemetry is just one of the many technologies that are on these projects. Thanks. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Hey, really good to hear about the application of some technology on this, and we might drill down into some more detail of how that can be used. Thanks very much for sharing that one. So we've got our last speaker today, who is Ilka Loubser from Fulton Hogan, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how Fulton Hogan approaches sustainability, I think, as an overall. So please take it away, Ilka. Looking forward to hearing from you about how you get the job done on this one, and then we'll be on to the Q&A, which Michelle is going to start facilitating, and then we'll be on to your Q&A. So those that are watching, please ask away using the chat function. Go ahead, Ilka.
Awesome. Thanks, Fraser. I'm assuming you can hear me. Yeah, great presentations. Thanks, everyone. And really cool to see that our clients are so on board with the work that you guys are doing, Tom. So I'm going to talk a little bit about decarbonisation. I know it's not, not all of sustainability is decarbonisation, but I wanted to talk about it in particular today because I think it's definitely for us as a business a huge challenge, and it'll probably be one of our biggest challenges in the sustainability space. And I suspect as an industry, it will be too. So I guess when we're talking about decarbonisation, first and foremost for us, it means we have to deliver our commitments that we've made, right? And we've got 2 key commitments. So the first one is we want to reduce our emissions 30% by 2030. Now that's against our 2020-21 baseline year. And it's basically just for our scope 1 and 2 emissions at this stage. So scope 1 and 2 emissions being basically energy that we pay for and that we can control on our sites. And I guess scope 3 emissions, just as a bit of a side note, is basically everything else, right? So it's all our subcontractors, energy use, and all the materials and the likes. So yeah, so it's really just 30% reduction of that scope 1 and 2 emissions against our baseline year. But that's reduction despite growth, right? So as a business, we're going to be growing a lot until 2030. And so not only do we have to offset the 30% we started with, but we'll need to abate to offset the growth component as well. So that's a really daunting task when you think about it. And then we have this big ambitious goal where we want to be net carbon zero by 2050, right? And that just happens to be the year that I hopefully get to retire. So I'll know if I've done a good job or not at the end of it. And I guess if we're talking about meeting that commitment, I think it's important to understand, firstly, for us as a business, where our carbon comes from. And I think this will probably be fairly similar to a lot of other companies within the industry. Because if you think about emissions, it's mostly diesel, right? So if you look at that graph on the left-hand side, about 78% of our emissions come from burning diesel. And then we've got a little bit from gas and oil, and that's mostly that we burn in our asphalt plants. And then a tiny bit from electricity. And it's not because we don't use a lot of electricity, but we're just really fortunate in New Zealand where most of our grid is renewable, right? So it comes at a really low emission factor. So talking about emissions, we're really talking about a diesel problem, right, for us as a business. And it's also within our internal supply chain mostly, right? So it's not the bits that always face the clients, but it's the parts that actually go and produce a lot of the materials that Tom spoke about earlier that comes with that embodied carbon and gets incorporated into a contract or project. So it really sits in our quarry sector, in our transport or haulage sector, and in our asphalt production. And if you think about it a little bit differently, it's quarries, which is about 20%. It's asphalt production, which is about 15% for us. And then transport and everything else, it's basically mobile fleet, right? So it's light vehicles, it's trucks, and it's yellow gear. So it's excavators, loaders, rollers, graders, etc., right? And that makes up about 60% of our emissions. And that's really important to understand because as part of meeting the commitments as well, I think we have to recognize the challenges, right? And I'll be open and honest about this. This is challenges that we're facing as a big contractor a few years into this journey, and I can expect everybody else in the industry will too. So the first one is growth. Like I mentioned before, we're going to carry on growing, you know, fingers crossed, all the way until 2030. And, you know, historically what we've done is we've tried to use revenue as an indicator of what that growth could look like out to 2030. But we've come to recognize that that is harder and harder with the likes of inflation and things like that actually skewing that number, because revenue isn't a good reflection anymore of the actual input of work and hence the carbon that you use, right? So even having a good estimate of where you're heading in terms of your growth is proving a challenge at the moment. And then, of course, on top of that, having to go and abate and offset that number so that we can reach our 30% reduction goal as well. Then the next three, I guess you can kind of package together a little bit. It's around technology in the mobile fleet space, right? So it's the availability to have access to technology around energy conversion. So basically getting our mobile fleet off diesel towards battery electric, hydrogen, or whatever. So it's the availability of scalable technology. I mean, we're seeing bits and pieces drip feed into New Zealand now, not so much from the trusted brands, although that is certainly picking up, but it needs to be at scale, right? So we need to not have access to just one or two items, but potentially 50 or 100 in a year. It's the risk and cost of adopting this new technology as well. You know, it's a significant switch going from tried and trusted diesel to something that we've never used before. And there's a lot of risk, and it definitely comes at a cost premium. And then just also recognizing a replacement schedule of our mobile fleet, right? So we hang on to gear like a lot of other businesses for as long as we can. And so that means, you know, the replacement schedule will dictate how quickly we can adopt that technology. And it could be decades from the time when technology becomes available before we see that full conversion within our own fleet. And then the other one that's sort of come to light over the work that we've been doing the past couple of years is around electrical security. So most of our sites run at capacity. You know, we use all the electricity supply that we've got. And so that means a lot of the projects that we're focusing on at the moment is moving towards electrification, so getting off diesel to electricity. But of course, there'll be increasing electricity use in future when we do switch to battery electric and the likes. So that's a real constraint, and we're finding it's costing us a lot of money to do those upgrades to the gate and within the gate as well. And it does take a long time working with these providers, right? So there's a bit of work that we think could happen around that space to try and get away from the current user pay model so that we can solve that challenge together. And then the next one is around technical acceptance. It's just, getting that acceptance that Tom spoke around in the spec and the likes around new low carbon products that we want to take to the market.
Sorry, Ilka, I'll just butt in here because we want to leave some time for Q&A. It's really unfair being the last speaker, but
no, that's right,
and I'm not hurrying you on. It's like super
Yeah.
interesting. I think this slide especially is super interesting. But I really want to give Michelle some time.
I'll quickly cover off this slide, mate, and then I promise you'll be rid of me. So anyway, so what I just quickly wanted to show you guys is what we're doing about it, right? So taking into consideration where our carbon comes from, what the challenges are, we're doing a hell of a lot in the space, and I'm happy to share any ideas or initiatives that anybody wants to learn more about. But just quickly, how we're thinking about it is a bit of a hierarchical approach, if you like, right? So starting from the top and working our way down in order of preference. So first and foremost, it's all about energy reduction. So just reducing the amount of diesel, electricity, all that sort of stuff that we use. And so that's around efficiency, behavior, doing simple stuff well. It's things like replacing our asphalt plants, and it's also bringing products to the market like reduced energy asphalt, which I would love to talk about a lot. So please hit me up afterwards. And then the next step, once we've done energy reduction, is moving to electrification, like I said. So just getting stuff off diesel and plugging it in, right? Because there's a huge emission saving the minute you do that. And only once we've done the first couple of steps would we consider fuel conversion. And that's because technology is really going to hold us back in the sector. But also, by doing the first couple of steps, you make the most before you have to get to the fuel conversion piece, right? So stuff we're doing in that space at the moment, we're actively converting our light vehicle fleet. You'll see a lot less Fulton Hogan utes on the road, a lot more hybrid RAV4s, and that's on purpose. And we're also trialing a lot of battery electric type gear and seriously investigating hydrogen, not just the consumption, but potentially the generation and consumption of. And then lastly, very, very lastly, once we've done those other ones, we do consider offsetting, right? Because the reality is the growth and the technology is probably going to mean that to hit our 2030 goals, there is going to be some offsetting as part of that decarbonisation journey. And we'll be open and honest and say that. But that's our absolute last resort. And if we do go down that way, we're very keen to do meaningful offsetting as well. So what I'll do is, Fraser, I'll cut it short. And then maybe if we want to kick off the Q&A at this point, That's all right.
Yeah, well, I think that's really good. So I'm sorry to leave you a scan of time last up, but I think it's really good, Michelle, if you could come back on and we can have a bit of Q&A now, and I'm sure you'll have your mind racing. We are a little bit over time. I intended for this to be an hour. Presenters, if you could turn your videos on once again, because I'd like to check in and just check how comfortable you are with going perhaps to like a little bit over, like maybe 5:05 or even 10 past or something. We'll just see where we get to. I think I'm going to put a hard cap at 10:05, but please take it away, Michelle. And audience, please feel free to ask us any questions for our awesome panelists.
Great, thanks very much for those presentations. They were really insightful, and you covered off a lot of the questions that I had already, so that's great. If anyone else has got questions, keep them coming. As we said, I saw a question come up about how is CCNZ trying to improve collaboration across the industry. It's a great question. We're starting here now, and we're keen to understand what you need, what you'd like to know more of, and I'm keen to run more of these. So get in touch with us, let us know what you want to see more of, and we will try and interview people and provide those resources to the industry. Another point Julian made about wanting to see some success stories about soil waste management. I agree, and so would Fraser. We're quite passionate about this. We're doing some work in this space, and that will probably be the subject of a whole webinar. We can talk to you more about that if you want to come to us about that. As well as that, there's water and mud recycling, which I'm pretty keen on looking into more. And something else, baseline and scope 3 has come up, baseline reporting. So if you're not sure what that means, it's reporting what emissions, what carbon emissions you have or you're creating, I guess, at the moment. That's your baseline, that's your starting place. And then from there, you're trying to reduce, like Ilka was saying, they've got the 30% reduction, but taking into account growth. So I think the message is don't get overwhelmed by the future so much. We need to start somewhere. And so coming back to that, I'm working on a prototype at the moment just for a small tool that subcontractors will be able to use to record their fuel and then feed that into the main contractor's Scope 3 emissions. So that will be coming. So I did have a question for the panel. It's come up, procurement is a thing. I know a couple of you touched on it and there's a couple of questions in there, but how can we work together to reduce, so competition and IP come up all the time, and that's a bit frustrating. So has anyone got any thoughts about how we can sort of move away from that, or what your thoughts are on that sort of side of things?
Yeah, so I can maybe jump in here, if that's all right. We're finding the clients, so looking at you here, Tom, the clients are a really good way of sort of promoting that sharing within the industry between us as contractors. So, you know, putting ideas up to the client, and if it works, being able to sort of replicate that with other contractors, I think is a real win. And at the same time, we are seeing a lot of opportunities come up to partner with clients on certain initiatives like we have with Healthy Waters, and that just makes it so much easier on us, right? It takes the risk and costs and shares it and gives us confidence to go and try stuff out. And I think that's going to be so important in this space, with products, with technology, with everything else, and just helping each other. And that goes along with the technical acceptance part as well, right, that we spoke about before, just making it easier to allow for alternative products and the like, and those specifications, I think is super important, and bringing the designers along on the journey as part of that.
I think adding on to what Ilka was saying there is just like establishing industry-wide partnerships and forums where different organizations and different people can share their best practices, share what their challenges are, and work collaboratively together on, you know, how they can better achieve sustainable outcomes. So including, you know, a webinar like this where people can connect and network.
Yeah.
Just from I suppose from a client side, I think new technology is risky, and it is all about sharing the risk. And as a client, we have a responsibility to take, you know, if they're being innovative, to enable that environment and maybe take on some of that risk and not just load it onto our contractors or designers. So I think the collaboration, that's sort of quite a need.
Great, yeah. Just to, I guess, close that out, just so a bit of a rundown on what CCNZ is involved in. We are involved in, through the committees, trying to get each of the committees for various things to be thinking about sustainability and what some of those roadblocks are, perhaps with the technical specifications and contract requirements, procurement, that sort of thing. So what are some things holding up innovation, but especially in the specifications, and then taking that, and actually, as the reviews come through, we're trying to build that in. So we've in that space. Also trying to improve engagement with local government and really understand how we can have better early contractor involvement, and whether that's the right thing, or at what stage it happens, and what the pros and cons of that are. But also really talking about risk sharing, like Tom was mentioning, and really understanding risk. There seems to be a bit of an adversity to risk, which is understandable, but it's probably not going to help us in the sustainability space for the next wee while. Another question I had, so it was brought up about the new government and their view on life. But having said that, I don't think we're not here to just try and comply with legislation. So what from the panel, what do you want to say about that? So how does sustainability just become not just another thing to comply with, but something that adds to our industry, and what's thoughts on that?
I might chip in a little bit here as well, sorry, because I think, there's a bit of a leadership role there as well, and I think we might see the new government start looking to industry to lead a lot more, perhaps, rather than kind of top-down funding everything. So, looking to that as a point of competitive difference, I mean, maybe that's coming up. Anyway, sorry, panel, go ahead.
I agree with you, Fraser. I think governments are looking to the industry to drive the direction that that's going to take, and then if they finance it, it's helpful. But I think in terms of how they, any government, whether it's New Zealand or anyone else, it looks that they expect industry to drive the change, and then they will embrace it.
Yeah, I think just us as an organisation, we committed, right? There's no going back at all, regardless of government changes, because I think at the end of the day, as a country, we committed. It's maybe just how we do it that'll be slightly different, but does that matter? We still got a lot to do, right? We just need to be heading in the right direction. So and it's inevitable. Like us as an industry, we are going to see a huge change in the energy that we use, which is a massive shift. Whether that happens tomorrow or a couple of years longer, it doesn't really matter. It's going to happen, and so I think we need to get ready for that. And keep working, eh?
Yeah, I think just reiterating probably what everyone else has said is just to prevent sustainability from becoming mere compliance. It's really essential to embed them into our core values and the culture of our organizations. And as you mentioned there, Fraser, leadership and the leadership commitment becomes really crucial there as well.
Yeah, and there is also the point of it's not just what's happening in New Zealand, it's what's happening in the rest of the world, and whether we're ahead or behind, we're part of a globe, part of a global issue, and we're looking for overseas investments and exporting products and that sort of thing that's going to come into it. So it doesn't have to just be compliance with our legislation that we concern ourselves with. There's also the point that sustainability is about efficiency and productivity. So that's cost savings in itself. So has anyone got anything? I think this is my last question, but if you got anything to say about your easy wins, perhaps, or things that you think are holding us up that perhaps don't need to be.
Just going back to, sorry, I keep drumming on about decarbonisation, but like I said, it is a bit of a hot topic for us. It's just around coming back to that hierarchy, that energy reduction step is so important before we just look for an easy fix and jump straight to fuel or energy conversion, because there's a lot to gain there. Like you just said, it reduces costs because you're basically reducing the amount of diesel you burn. So it just makes sense a lot of times. But it also makes that transition easier when it does happen, right? Because we're very cognizant it's not going to be a like-for-like conversion going from a diesel to, say, a battery electric or similar. So we need to be as lean as we possibly can from an energy consumption point of view to make that transition as easy as possible, right? It's not an easy win because a lot of that energy reduction stuff, it's stuff we should be doing anyways, right? So it's good project management principles, it's behavior change, it's the likes. But I think it's a super important step, and it's one that's here now that we can all start on. And yeah, I think it's really a worthwhile step that you've got to take.
Thanks, Ilka. Yeah.
If I could just go back to the previous question, just with sustainability and with the government, with Auckland Council, we borrow a lot of money, and we're looking at green bonds, and this is international money. And it's a lot easier for us to access money through green bonds. And there's a whole criteria of sustainability that comes along with that. So it is embedded, and we're so tied in with the international community that it is here to stay, whether you're for it or against it. It's fully embedded. The thing, I think our challenge as clients in sustainability is when we ask for things in the tender, generally in a tender, you'll get what you ask for, but that skill is making it easily measurable and achievable throughout that contract. And we need to have a simple process so we can embed it in, as business as usual, but being able to measure, monitor, and grade it as well. So the next time the tender is around, it allows then the suppliers to resource up if, as a client, we are measuring and monitoring what they've said they're going to in sustainability. And I think it's just been a bit fluffy over the previous years. We just really need to make it core focus and simple.
Yeah, great. I was going to say a similar sort of thing, and that's the sort of thing where working together, I think, is really useful, because you can understand some of the contractors' issues, and we can understand some of the clients' issues, and hopefully we come to a bit of common ground where we can actually move forward. Was that all? Did anyone have any other questions or comments?
I can just add in on that easy wins there, Michelle. I just think as well, like, just employee engagement. So just making sure that you are really fostering a culture of sustainability among your employees, and really incentivizing, those sustainability kind of behaviors, and kind of incentivizing all the positive impacts that are being held. I think that's a great way. Just getting your employees engaged and getting them on board will do so much.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially with the younger generation coming through. They have probably higher expectations than others in the past. And I think they're starting to really look for a bit more than just pay, but something that speaks to their future.
Yeah.
Jim, did you have something you were going to say?
Yeah, no, I think, understanding sustainability. I think there's still a process where some people, some organisations are still trying to fully understand, the whole concept of sustainability, and how what changes they need to make within their own organisations to satisfy, whether it's their customers, the community, or the organisation itself. I still think that people are learning, what they need to do. It's not as new projects become available, understanding how they can prove and demonstrate sustainability. So there's a bit of work in that, I think.
Yeah, and we're working with others on a few tools that might be able to help people start to build up that knowledge and understand. It's a place to start. It's not going to solve all the problems, but as we keep saying, you've just got to make it a step. Understand that we're all on the same journey. It's not going to go away. It is something we need to really address, and hopefully these webinars will be a starting place for sharing, and we'll start to understand. I'd love to be in a different place in a year's time when we're actually, we've got over that initial hump of what are we doing and how are we measuring, and having some really good conversations. I think we're done, Fraser.
Yeah, great. Well, we managed to wrap it up before 10 past. So well done, everyone. That's great. I guess, thanks very much to all our presenters for all your time today. I guess there's some people stuck with us after 5, so that's great. Lots more we could say on this topic. I mean, even something like conversations we've had before around, having different clients with different reporting systems, and then subcontractors reporting to contractors. So there's some complexity there to break down. I think there's a lot more subject matter we could go on. I've heard some stories about how individual contractors recycle, but I mean, there's a lot more material that we could go into. We're really keen for those of you that are here to let us know a little bit more about what you'd like to see. So in the meantime, though, thanks to our presenters, Jim French from Teletrac Navman, Ilka Loubser from Fulton Hogan, Tom Mansell, Auckland Council, Emelee Mello from Infrastructure Sustainability Council, and Michelle Farrell, CCNZ Technical Manager, for joining us today, and to all our audience as well. Hope you have a great night, and keep in touch.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.